The Texans have been forced into an impossible situation for the first round of the NFL draft. You want to make the right decision, but there's so many different players that you can go with. Trading up, trading back, offensive lineman, wide receiver help. There's anywhere reason you can go for positions in this draft. But in order to do that, you need to make the first pick count. You need to have that first pick because it sets up the rest of the draft in terms of what do you want to do if you're Nick Caserio and the Houston Texans. So today we're going to break down all mock drafts. We're looking at a month before the NFL draft. Let me know your thoughts on who the Texans should take. What's your favorite player? Any scenarios that really the Texans should consider, whether it's trading up in the second round. We talked about mock drafts before, but if you're new to the channel, hit that sub button. Really appreciate all the support on the past videos. And I know it's a little bit longer of an intro, but I want to break down kind of what we're looking at for the Texans in the first round because there's a lot to look forward to in terms of the players and specifics as to who they should draft and for the what reasons. First thing, let's take a look at PFF's mock draft for the Texans. It was mock draft Monday, a little bit late on Wednesday, but as far as the first round, they took Kelvin Banks, solid tackle from Texas. Then they took Jared Wilson in the second round, another offensive lineman. And it's a weird thing to take two offensive linemen that are kind of tackles. And for the Texans, I do agree, but you have Blake Fisher there, who's a second-year guy who can play right tackle. You can kind of move him around for whatever you think. But you signed two veteran guys for a reason, so I think they're going to draft one tackle and take a guard. But it's a matter of who do you take because there's not much guard depth. So do you take that in the first round? A lot of questions, but let's get through this mock. Savion Williams, wide receiver from TCU, Jackson Hawes, tight end from Georgia, Nazir Stackhouse, and Raheem Sanders. So a lot to look forward to from this mock draft, but let's kind of narrow the focus down into the first round for the Texans because if we're looking at PFF, I would say that this is probably the most accurate mock drafts in terms of all the simulators that I've been on, and the likelihood of maybe they'll have Josh Simmons drop to 25, it's a possibility. Kelvin Banks could easily drop as well. But let's look at all the possibilities for the Texans, right? Luther Burden, first things first. They need a receiver. So do you take Burden? Do you take Gray Zabel, who's another monster? As far as everybody, let's take a look. Kelvin Banks. There's a very good possibility he could fall to 25. Josh Simmons was there as well in other drafts, but as far as what the Texans are looking at, they would most likely have to trade up to get their guy, whether it's Emeka Egbuka, Kelvin Banks, Josh Simmons. I don't know what they're looking at specifically, but I like Banks. His overall athleticism score, you can see his production score, 83, solid fifth amongst tackles in the combine. So for what the NFL is breaking this down as on NFL.com, it's a solid grade. But moving on to Josh Simmons, another tackle that they could go into investing. He's coming off that injury, so that's a big problem for a tackle, and you never really want to see that, right? When you have somebody in the trenches coming off a knee injury, that is very significant, so there's a good chance Simmons could fall to the late first round. But here's something interesting that I found. If the Texans do take a tackle in the first round, the likelihood of finding a guard later in the draft seems unlikely. So 25, if they don't find their guy, they could easily trade back. But Tyler Booker, who I've looked into, obviously, the athleticism score of 56 scares me, but the 81 production score, the first in terms of guards in the combine, in terms of that's pretty good. And in terms of his rank, I'm like this on him. I would much rather go get Donovan Jackson from Ohio State, but that is an option for the first round. Gray Zabel, another beast of a tackle. I mean, as far as his production score, he outranks everybody. He's a big guy, 6'6", 312, can put him on the outside. He's got athletic ability. Look at his broad jump. Look at his bench press. I mean, as far as what I've heard, this is not a bad pick. I feel like the Texans would be that team to go take their guy specifically. So first round, I took Zabel, and the problem is, I don't think the Texans need to take a tackle in the first round because they have this guy called Ozzie Trapillo, who they actually really like. And there's been rumors that the Caserio has been interested in him and his ability to play for the Texans. So there's just interest in both sides there. And I feel like with Caserio also going offensive line help in free agency, filling the needs right now, Cam Robinson left tackle, Trent Brown right tackle, they're not likely to draft a tackle to start immediately in terms of the first round. That's what I think, because if you draft a tackle in the first round, realistically, you're drafting high because you want a player to start right away, right? So there's no reason to go ahead and take a tackle who's probably going to take a little time to develop, sit behind a veteran, learn from him, and then probably get thrusted into play around mid-season, which makes sense, right? So do you consider taking a wide receiver in Luther Burden, who is not a bad idea? I mean, to be a number 2 to Nico Collins, and you have him, Christian Kirk in the slot. Burden, as much as he has a good 2, he's probably a better slot receiver, but he's a shifty receiver who can do a lot. And talking about Burden, I have him on here, right here. So Luther Burden, he is a shifty guy. I mean, reminds me a lot of Deebo Samuel, to where he catches those screen passes, he moves in and out of the tackles, and he can make a man miss. So I don't think the Texans do that, but there's definitely potential there. I just feel like they like receivers that are better later in the draft in terms of Royals from Utah State. So there's just a lot to look forward to. Jalen Royals, that was the mock draft I did. But in terms of the first round, I went with Gray Zabel. And then the second round, you kind of almost have to trade up for a guard, right? There's not many options at guard. You see Jared Wilson, center for Georgia. There's not too many options in the middle rounds. You had Donovan Jackson, 48. He went to the Dolphins. So if the Texans want to draft a guard and a tackle in the first 2 picks, they most likely have to trade back or trade up in the second round, right? So there's a lot of just tough things to do. If you trade back and get that extra draft pick 5th round later in the draft, there's a likelihood you could trade maybe a 3rd or 4th next year to trade up around 20 spots in the second round to draft Donovan Jackson. Or because you have 2 third-round picks, maybe Caserio is crazy enough to give up one of those third-round picks to move up from 25 to something to draft Emeka. But again, there's interest in Jalen Royals. There's interest in Ozzie Trapillo. There's interest in a running back and as well as a tackle. But taking 2 tackles with Blake Fisher already on the roster, I don't think that's a smart idea. And Jaden Higgins, I think, would fit well as a secondary complement to Nico Collins, just with his size alone. But as far as the first round, I'm concerned as if they should take a tackle or not, just because I feel like guard is more of a need than tackle, because you have a lot of veterans that you can play right now. And I'd rather draft a guy in Trapillo who is an absolute monster, who's 6'8", who has the potential to be something and can sit behind a Cam Robinson, and Blake Fisher can sit behind Trent Brown, and then the Texans can take Donovan Jackson with their first overall selection. I love Gray Zabel, but he can probably start right away. So I like what the Texans are doing, because I don't think they're going to go all out and take a tackle in the first round. As much as it makes sense, the Texans are a team to not do what makes sense, right? So there's just a lot of question marks as to who do they take in the first round. And this was my mock draft. I don't hate it. Zabel, Trapillo, Royals, and Harvey. And the whole point of doing mock drafts is to really find that kind of where do you go in the draft, right? Because if you take a tackle, there's not much guard help, and you might need to trade up from 58 to 38, 20 spots to go get your guy in Donovan Jackson, because he is probably the best guard tackle, the best guy to move around the line. You can really do the same thing with Titus Howard. Those guys can move around the line. And when you have players that can move around, especially when you have injuries, that is so helpful and crucial for Titus Howard to say, okay, yeah, put him at right tackle. We have Trent Brown went down. Okay, we could put him at right tackle. That's just so crucial. So I think Donovan Jackson makes the most sense for the first round. The Texans might take him 25th overall. They could trade back to the second round and take Donovan Jackson and then take Trapillo later with drafting Royals, and maybe not R.J. Harvey in the third round. They might go with another tackle just for depth. They could go with another receiver. They have a tight end. And I also didn't actually talk about Colston Loveland. And you guys heard my thoughts on earlier in the video, not this video, but past video where we did a mock draft. I'm not the biggest fan of going tight end because I just don't think it's a necessity right now. Tight end's more of like a fourth or a fifth need for the Texans. Right now, the first need is offensive line, whether that's tackle, guard, tackle. I think you need a guard more than anything right now because I Maybe not. Every part of the line is filled with a veteran. Laken Tomlinson, Trent Brown, and Cam Robinson. So you can take a tackle middle of the pack like you like in Trapillo, and then have him sit behind Robinson and have Blake Fisher sit behind Brown. And then if Trent Brown were to get injured, because we have those concerns, you could put Titus Howard at right tackle if you're not confident in Blake Fisher to start. And then if you draft Donovan Jackson, he can take over for Titus Howard at right guard because he can play guard, because we saw that at Ohio State and he moved inside for the playoffs. He played phenomenal. So I would just personally love to take somebody who can move all the way around the line. Yes, you want to take a Josh Simmons, a guy who is a Gray Zabel who can absolutely be a dominant anchor to your offensive line. But I would much rather take a player that can move left to right and go. He could play left tackle, he could play right tackle, and honestly, the flexibility there is huge for the Texans. So my pick for the first round would be Donovan Jackson. The problem is at 25, that's almost impossible to do, because why would you take a guy who's probably middle of the round selection? You have Burden there, you have Zabel. He's more like a 34. If you scroll down a little bit, this is a screenshot, but if you scroll down a little bit from this PFF draft, there is Donovan Jackson sitting right there. So I don't know if the Texans trade back to like 32, if they trade back to like 33, because this is deja vu all over again. Remember Kenyon Green, drafted 15th overall a few years ago? You don't want to reach on a guard that you don't know if, and I don't want to say don't know, because Donovan Jackson has proven everything to why he will be the guy. Kenyon Green was a guard from A&M who was a mid-round grade for a reason. Same thing with Jackson, who is a mid-round grade. Zion Johnson, the pick a couple later to the Chargers, I'm pretty sure it was 17 or 16, one of the picks right after the Texans. And the Texans traded back from 13 to 15 and drafted Kenyon Green. I was so disappointed. I wanted George Karlaftis so bad and didn't get him. Ended up getting Will Anderson, so it doesn't matter. But the whole point here is you want to make the right decision. So I don't want to reach on Donovan Jackson at 25, but I also don't want to miss out on him if you trade back to 35 and the Chiefs take him at 30 or something like that. So that's where I get a little just crazy in terms of, do the Texans make the right decision? Because there's a lot to look forward to in terms of all these guys. Tyler Booker, Kelvin Banks, Josh Simmons, Gray Zabel. They're all phenomenal players. I think Banks, you can't really go wrong. He can definitely start right away. But then what was the point of signing Cam Robinson? You know what I'm saying? So that's where I am looking at it from a standpoint of a GM and saying, okay, why would they draft a tackle who's NFL ready like Banks right now, who might not even be available at 25? But if he is, do you consider taking him when you already signed a tackle to be there for one season? So that's the question that I have for you guys. Do you take a tackle when you have the need already filled? And I don't know. It's such a difficult thing for me, because I'd much rather take somebody in round 2 or 3 that's a tackle and a guard that can sit behind and learn. Now, we could draft Banks, and that could be the similar process there. They could also take a tackle and Banks, Simmons, or Booker, and then take the other position, whether they take a guard first round, tackle second round, or you could trade up in the second round. There's just so many different possibilities. My pick is Donovan Jackson, whether it's 25th overall, 34th overall, you trade back. I don't really care. I love Emeka Egbuka. I think that would be a good pick, but it's all a matter of who's available. It's all a matter of what the Texans want to do with tackle, guard, Titus Howard. I'd love Donovan Jackson because he can move around, but there are so many different things that can happen. There are so many different things that they can do, and this is just me breaking down what they should do for the first round. And I think any one of these players in Banks, Simmons, Booker, Zabel, Loveland, Burden, you can't really go wrong. Loveland is a weird one because it's like that's an offensive threat, and it's kind of like a last resort. Like if Burden's gone, if Booker, Simmons, Banks are all gone, that's kind of like I wouldn't mind getting a weapon, but it's almost like I would never see Nick Caserio taking a tight end in round 1 when you need offensive line help badly. So I like the Loveland idea. I know I hated on it a little bit a couple videos ago in terms of we don't need a tight end, but it was more about the fact that I don't think the Texans take a tight end, right? So a lot to work on, a lot to think about, a lot to look forward to. A lot. So, about a month until the NFL draft. I'm stoked. Leave your comments down below as to who the Texans take in round 1 because it is crucial. My pick is Donovan Jackson, although receiver seems enticing. The only reason I'd do it is if Emeka Egbuka falls to 25, and I would 100% trade up in the second round to go get Donovan Jackson because that is awesome when you have two guys that can just move around the line like it's clockwork. So thank you everyone so much for watching. Leave your comments down below. There's my mock draft. It's we might need to work on it a little bit, but I don't hate it. I think for the first 3 rounds, because PFF only lets you do 3 rounds, but I think that's solid. So let me know your thoughts. What would you do differently? And yeah, thank you all for the support. Appreciate everyone watching. Hit that sub button if you're new, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace out. Appreciate you.